So we all know about dyslexia.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It's,
Yeah.
a household word at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It's something most of us can generally recognize, or, at least we've heard about it.
Right.
But what if I told you about its invisible, like, lesser-known sibling?
The one that kind of flies under the radar.
Totally under the radar. It's this neurological bottleneck that essentially traps these brilliant, complex ideas inside a child's mind.
It makes them look lazy
Right.
or defiant.
Exactly. When in reality, they are literally trying harder than anyone else in the room. And
Yeah.
that hidden bottleneck is called dysgraphia.
Yes, dysgraphia.
And understanding that is really our mission for this deep dive. Because today we are unpacking this stack of K-12 educational and mental health support documents.
Really fascinating stuff, too.
It is. We're specifically looking at how this organization in Georgia called MentalSpace School is tackling this exact issue.
Right. Systematically tackling it.
Yeah. And to you, like listening to us right now, whether you are a parent sitting at the kitchen table just trying to get through homework, or an educator, or just someone who is fascinated by human communication, this will completely reframe how you view intelligence.
I mean, it forces a massive paradigm shift. It really does.
Oh, for sure.
Because we spend so much time in education focusing on, the curriculum and the visible structures of learning.
The stuff we can test and grade easily.
Exactly. But what we're really looking at today are the invisible barriers. When we talk about dysgraphia, we are talking about a fundamental breakdown in how a student actually experiences the physical act of showing what they know.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is happening in the brain here?
Well, it's a mechanical issue, really.
Right, because looking at the source material, the clinical definition of dysgraphia is very clear that this is a brain-based learning difference, and it specifically affects written expression.
Yes, written expression specifically.
It is not a matter of a kid just being lazy.
Not at all.
It's not defiance. And it absolutely has nothing to do with low intelligence, which, I think that is the most common and probably the most damaging misconception.
That misconception is the root of so much suffering for these students. Seriously. Because the core discrepancy with dysgraphia is this massive gap between a child's verbal expression and their written output.
So they can say it, but they just can't write it.
Exactly. You might have a student who can give you this 20-minute, highly articulate, just incredibly insightful verbal presentation on, say, the causes of the American Revolution.
Like a college-level thesis just spoken out loud.
Right. But the moment you ask them to write down a single paragraph about it,
Yeah.
that fluency just evaporates.
I was actually trying to visualize what this actually feels like for a kid sitting in a classroom, and I kept coming back to this analogy.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so imagine your brain is hooked up to a high-speed fiber optic internet connection.
Okay, the premium package.
Right, you have access to all these brilliant ideas, you can download complex thoughts, make these rapid-fire connections, and process information instantly.
The intelligence is undeniably there.
Unquestionably, the bandwidth is massive, but, and here's the catch, the only way you are allowed to share those brilliant ideas with the outside world is by routing them through a broken, screeching dial-up modem from 1995.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sound alone.
Right, and that modem is the hand trying to physically write. So the ideas are flying around at the speed of light in their head, but they get completely bottlenecked by this slow, glitchy physical mechanism.
What's fascinating here is how that analogy perfectly captures the sheer cognitive overload these students experience.
Because it's literally a hardware issue, right?
Exactly. Because, when a neurotypical person writes, the mechanics of forming letters and spelling words are largely automated.
Yeah, I don't think about how to draw an A when I write one.
Right. We don't think about shaping the letter or how to hold the pen. But for a student with dysgraphia, that automation never fully takes over.
So they're actively concentrating on the physical drawing of the letter.
Yes. Their working memory is so consumed by the physical motor planning, literally just making the pencil move correctly, that they have absolutely no cognitive bandwidth left over for grammar or sentence structure.
Or even just remembering the brilliant idea they wanted to share in the first place.
Exactly. It's gone by the time the word is on the paper.
And the physical symptoms are incredibly visceral in the source material. We are talking about painful, cramped grips on pencils. Right?
Hand fatigue is a huge indicator.
Yeah, and incredibly slow writing speeds. Plus, handwriting that is just completely illegible, sometimes even to the student themselves.
And their spelling lags way behind their actual reading ability.
Right. And just to add another layer of complexity to this, the documents note that this rarely exists in a vacuum. It frequently co-occurs with ADHD and dyslexia.
which creates these overlapping profiles that make it incredibly hard to pinpoint exactly why a student is struggling.
It just looks like a mess of symptoms.
Right. A teacher might see a messy, brief assignment from a kid with ADHD and just assume, well, they rushed through it because they were distracted.
Because that's the easiest assumption.
Yes. But society at large has been conditioned, culturally and educationally, to equate physical writing ability with intellectual capacity.
Oh, for sure. Good handwriting is historically seen as the mark of a good student.
Absolutely.
If a kid hands in a beautifully written, neat essay, the immediate halo effect is like, oh, this child is smart and hardworking.
They get the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. But if a child produces a crumpled paper with 3 barely legible sentences, the assumption is they just didn't try. We are essentially grading the broken dial-up modem and assuming we are grading the fiber optic internet connection.
But by doing that, we marginalize an entire population of thinkers.
It's heartbreaking, honestly.
It is. And that tragic disconnect leads us directly to the psychological fallout. Because when there is a massive, completely unsupported bottleneck between a student's intellect and their physical output, the natural consequence is immense psychological distress.
Because they know they're smart, but the world is telling them they aren't.
Exactly. The emotional toll of dysgraphia goes way, way beyond just struggling to hold a pencil. We're looking at chronic anxiety, deep frustration, and perhaps most destructively, profound shame.
Shame. I mean, shame is such a heavy, dark word to associate with an elementary or middle school student.
It is.
Yeah.
But imagine being a bright child who knows all the answers. You understand the story. You can build incredibly complex worlds in your imagination.
It's got the whole movie playing in your head.
Right. But every single time you are asked to prove your intelligence on a piece of paper, you fail. And you fail in front of your peers, day after day, year after year. That failure inevitably gets internalized.
It becomes their identity.
Exactly. The child stops thinking, writing is hard for me, and starts believing, I am stupid.
Wow. Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of a tired parent at the kitchen table. It is Tuesday night, you were trying to get through homework, and your child is having a full-blown meltdown over a single paragraph writing assignment.
A very common scenario, sadly.
Right? There are tears, pencils are being thrown, or maybe they just completely shut down and refuse to even look at the paper.
Flight or fight.
Yeah. But the immediate assumption your brain jumps to as a parent is stubbornness. It looks like defiance. So how do we untangle that? How do we shift the perspective from a kid who won't do it to a kid who can't do it?
This raises an important question about how we interpret a child's actions. We have to fundamentally reframe how we view behavior.
Okay, how so?
Well, behavior is simply communication. It is a language, especially for children who do not have the vocabulary or the self-awareness to articulate their neurological struggles.
They don't have the words for it.
Right. A child cannot tell you, Mother, my working memory is currently overwhelmed by the motor planning required to form these letters.
Yeah, no 8-year-old is saying that. So the meltdown isn't the problem at all. It's the distress signal.
Yes. The meltdowns, the avoidance tactics, needing to sharpen the pencil 5 times, sudden trips to the bathroom right when writing time starts, or mysteriously losing their notebook.
Oh man, the classic lost notebook.
Right. These are actually symptoms of deep shame and anxiety. When a child feels cornered by a task they neurologically cannot execute in the way expected, their autonomic nervous system kicks in. It is a literal fight-or-flight response.
Which means our traditional ways of handling this in schools are totally backwards.
Completely backwards.
Like, if we use standard classroom discipline, keeping a kid in for recess because they didn't finish their writing, or giving them a detention for tearing up their paper, we aren't correcting a behavioral choice.
No, we aren't.
We're actively punishing a neurological difference.
We are punishing a child for having a broken dial-up modem. We are reinforcing the shame rather than addressing the bottleneck.
That is so wild to think about.
Recognizing dysgraphia for what it actually is, a mechanical failure of output, not a moral failure of effort, is the critical first step to saving a student's academic self-esteem.
Okay, so once we actually recognize that the avoidance is driven by neurological distress rather than, defiance, we have to change our expectations and our tools.
I have to adapt.
Right. We have to bridge that gap between the fiber optic brain and the paper. And the clinical pathways for this and the source material are really fascinating.
They are very specific.
Yeah. First, an official diagnosis must come from a licensed clinician or a psychoeducational evaluator. You can't just guess at this.
No, absolutely not.
Oh.
Because the formal evaluation provides the legal and practical roadmap for how to support the student.
It unlocks the actual accommodation.
Exactly. The formal evaluation provides the specific data needed. And once that diagnosis is in place, effective support requires a very specific two-pronged strategy.
Which is what?
You have to pair specific accommodations with explicit structured instruction.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The accommodations for dysgraphia listed here include things like keyboarding, extended time, reduced copying from the board, and scribing.
Scribing is a huge one.
Yeah, where the child dictates their thoughts and someone else writes them down. By using these tools, or like speech-to-text assistive technology, we are completely decoupling the physical act of writing from the act of expressing knowledge.
We are removing the barrier.
We are bypassing the dial-up modem entirely.
Yes, you are finally letting the student show what they know, rather than showing how well their hand works.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about the cognitive relief of scribing for a moment. If a child can just pace around the room and talk out their brilliant story about a dragon while an aide types it up, you are suddenly assessing their vocabulary, their narrative structure, and their creativity.
You're actually grading the story, not the handwriting.
Exactly. The motor skills barrier is completely removed.
It is brilliant in its simplicity, but the source material is clear that it's only half the equation.
Right. The second prong.
Yeah, it is very explicitly noted that support must also include therapy to repair the emotional toll on the student's confidence. I mean, why isn't giving them a laptop enough?
Because you cannot just hand a child a keyboard, which, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic accommodation, and expect everything to instantly be okay.
It doesn't magically fix the past.
Exactly. By the time a child receives a dysgraphia diagnosis, they've usually endured years of intense frustration.
Years of being told they aren't trying hard enough.
Right. A keyboard does not erase the memory of 100 meltdowns at the kitchen table, or the years of feeling othered while watching their classmates easily finish assignments.
The trauma of feeling stupid for years doesn't just vanish because you got an iPad.
Exactly. The accommodation handles the mechanical barrier going forward, but the therapy is required to heal the psychological wounds from the past.
That makes total sense.
You have to rebuild the student's academic self-esteem from the ground up, while simultaneously providing that explicit, structured instruction on how to actually organize written work.
Because they still need to learn how to structure an essay.
Right, because dysgraphia also affects the ability to sequence thoughts. It requires a completely holistic view of the student.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. It's one thing to say a child needs specialized therapy, psychoeducational evaluations, and high-tech writing tools.
It sounds expensive.
Very. It's another entirely to actually provide that for thousands of kids across the state without breaking the bank. I mean, how does a public school actually pull that off?
Logistics are the real challenge.
Yeah, because providing individualized, high-tech therapeutic support at scale sounds logistically impossible for a chronically underfunded school system.
And this brings us to the operational reality of how you actually deliver this care, which is where organizations like MentalSpace School come into play.
Right, the Georgia group from the documents.
Yes. They provide a fascinating case study in how to operationalize complex, multi-tiered mental health and educational support specifically for K-12 schools in Georgia.
So let's look at how they are actually doing this, because they offer a massive suite of services, but a few really stand out when we think about our dysgraphic student.
Like their therapy model.
Exactly. They offer same-day teletherapy, and they have dedicated therapist teams per school. They also handle crisis intervention, staff wellness, and importantly, family counseling.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, having same-day teletherapy integrated directly into the school environment is an absolute game changer.
Because it's immediate.
Right. Think back to that student having a meltdown over a writing assignment. In a traditional model, that meltdown leads to discipline, a call home, and maybe a referral to a counselor who has a 3-month waiting list.
By which point the kid's entire academic week or even month is totally ruined.
Exactly. But with immediate school-integrated teletherapy, that dysregulation can be addressed in real time.
While they're still in the building.
Right. The student can de-escalate with a culturally competent professional who actually understands their specific learning profile.
That's huge.
And the fact that MentalSpace School provides licensed, diverse therapists ensures that these therapeutic interventions are actually resonant and effective for the specific communities they serve. Building trust requires clinicians who reflect the student body.
They also heavily emphasize family-school coordination, which makes so much sense to me.
It's vital.
Because, like, if the school is using speech-to-text technology, but the parents at home are still forcing the kid to handwrite their essays because they think that's building character, the therapy isn't going to work.
No, it'll just cause more friction.
Everyone have to be on the same page.
The ecosystem of care has to extend from the classroom straight into the living room.
Now, there is a very strict timeline driving all of this in Georgia right now.
Yes, the legislative push.
Right. MentalSpace School operates in full HIPAA and FERPA compliance, meaning they protect all medical and educational records. But the major catalyst here is the HB 268 compliance deadline.
House Bill 268.
Exactly. For context, Georgia House Bill 268 is legislation that pushes schools to establish clear, comprehensive protocols and support systems for student mental well-being and safety. And for you listening, keep in mind today is May 28, 2026.
The clock is ticking.
It really is. The deadline for schools to be compliant with this mandate is July 2026. That is barely a month away.
That is essentially tomorrow in the administrative timeline of a public school system.
Oh, yeah. Bureaucracy moves slow.
It does. The urgency for Georgia districts to implement systemic mental health solutions is immense right now. They are scrambling to build these infrastructures before the deadline.
But what really caught my attention here isn't just the therapy itself or the deadline, but the fact that they've entirely removed the financial wall blocking kids from getting the help.
The funding model is incredible.
It really is. The accessibility and insurance breakdown in the documents is amazing. MentalSpace School accepts almost all major private insurances. Let's see, BCBS, Cigna, Aetna, UHC, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, AmeriGroup.
A very comprehensive list.
Yeah. But crucially, if a student is on Medicaid, the out-of-pocket cost is exactly $0.
And that financial piece is the linchpin of the entire operation. It democratizes access to necessary mental health care and diagnostic support.
So what does this all mean?
It's a total systemic overhaul.
Yeah. To me, it means we are seeing a model where the traditional hurdles like long wait lists, massive out-of-pocket costs, lack of communication between doctors and teachers, they're simply being removed.
They've looked away.
Right. $0 for Medicaid and same-day access inside the school building effectively dismantles the barriers to entry for this critical care. And for anyone wanting to see how they structure this, their contact details are mentalspaceschool.com, or you can just reach them at mentalspaceschool@checksanctherapy.com.
By embedding dedicated clinical teams within the school ecosystem, MentalSpace School ensures that the accommodations we discussed, the scribing, the assistive technology, the structured therapy, they don't just stay as theoretical recommendations on a doctor's notepad.
They actually get used.
Exactly. Because in a fractured system, a kid gets a diagnosis from an outside doctor, brings the paper to the school, and it just sits in a filing cabinet somewhere.
Gathering dust.
Right. But with this integrated model, those accommodations are actively managed, monitored, and adjusted. It bridges the massive gap between a clinical recommendation and the lived classroom reality.
It takes it from just an idea to an actual daily practice.
Precisely.
So, looking back at the journey of this deep dive today, we started by unmasking dysgraphia.
The lesser-known sibling.
Right. We realized it is not a behavioral choice or a sign of low intelligence, but a profound neurological disconnect between a high-speed, brilliant mind and the broken dial-up modem of physical writing.
A hardware issue.
Exactly. We explored the devastating emotional toll of shame and anxiety that occurs when this disconnect goes completely unsupported.
To fight or flight.
Yeah. And finally, we looked at how systemic integrated solutions like MentalSpace School in Georgia are solving the problem of scale, providing the urgently needed mechanical accommodations and the therapeutic healing right inside the schools themselves.
And to you, listening to this, I really hope this exploration encourages you to look a little closer at the behavioral struggles of the people around you, especially children.
It's so important.
It is. When you see frustration, avoidance, or a sudden meltdown over a task that seems so simple to you, just pause. Ask yourself, are you seeing laziness, or are you witnessing an unsupported barrier? Are you looking at a child who won't do it, or a child who physically and neurologically can't?
It changes absolutely everything when you adjust that lens.
It really does.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked heavily today about how accommodations like scribing, keyboarding, and speech-to-text assistive technology are the great equalizers for dysgraphia.
The workarounds.
Right. They successfully bypass the physical limitation. But if that is the case, how might our entire definition of writing need to evolve in the educational system of the future?
Oh, that's a great point.
Because does our society place way too much value on the physical act of handwriting when assessing someone's intelligence? If a student's ideas are brilliant, insightful, and profoundly empathetic, does it really matter if those ideas were spoken to a machine instead of carved out with a pencil?